Okay, so the first way of adding detail is just through creating that detail right here in Blender and actually transferring that over. So first thing I want to do is hide the low, and I'll be working on the high. So one thing we've done over and over again, of course, is to grab all of the edges and just give them that slight bevel so we can get rid of this razor edge that we are used to seeing in 3D objects that you just don't get in the real world. And we want to kind of get rid of that, even if it is a very, very slight bevel. It is always better to get away from that because seeing this razor sharp edge, unless you're going for this polygonated look, it instantly makes your model look like it just time traveled from the 90s. So we want to kind of get rid of that. But in this example here, I want to actually do some other just minor little details to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about as far as like adding other geometry. So this is hard surface, some kind of piece of machinery or whatnot. So I'm just hitting I for an inset and just dropping this in, E for extrusion, and just pulling this back. And now remember, as we're creating this detail, this is all going to be faked detail. So it's going to be the normal map giving you the illusion that these extra bits of geometry even exist. So we can't go super deep with it because then it'll just fail in the burn. And even if it doesn't fail, if it tries to go too far, the illusion is going to break pretty easily. So whatever extra details you do add, just make sure to make that if they're popping out or punching in, that it be very subtle. So same here, I'm just going to do something real quick. And I'm not bothering to actually do this all the way around the model. Just kind of giving you examples of some real basic level stuff that you can just kind of add, or just the idea of how you can add this stuff to it. So again, with the I for inset, I'm just doing an extrusion, popping it out, still not very far, something to that effect. So also another method of adding detail is just to actually add other objects to this object, and same deal, they need to be subtle and not very far out. So something common and kind of industrial level stuff would be to have a bunch of bolts kind of in it. And so let's do with that with a mesh. Just going to grab an icosphere, turn it up a little bit, and then go in front view. So this is going to be just kind of a rivet. And remember too, we're building the high to project this detail onto our low. So it's only going to exist as a texture. So as far as poly count and all that is concerned, as long as you're able to manipulate this stuff without slowing down your computer, that's all that really matters, because this is just going to get used to create that fake detail. So it's not something that's going to exist in a 3D engine or anything like that. It's going to create your 2K or 4K image, and the size of that image is going to be the deciding point of whether or not it's going to be kind of a pig or whatnot. So we want this thing to be a rivet, so let's get rid of the back side. Like that. So grab the whole thing, shrink it down to a approximate rivet size. Undo that and get it to use the active element center, so it actually just, wait a minute, oh, the active, nope, I'm going to do that again. the individual origins, so its origin. Or actually, sorry, I'm going to do the 3D cursor, so it's right there. I'll do that and scale it back in. And so for this little thing that I'm doing here, it's just important to keep the origin sort of where the center of the object is, because I'm just going to use a snap to make sure it stays on the surface. And I'm also going to do a scale in the Z position just to kind of flatten it out to further help in the fact that I just want the illusion of these things. I don't need them sticking way out because I could cause it to fail. And then I'm getting out of edit mode. So I'm turning my snap on, and what I'm doing is snapping it to faces. I want the closest. I want to align the rotation to the target. Oop, get you. So I want to both move and rotate it. And I do believe that's enough to get me going. Okay, there we go. So now, as I place these things, they should essentially stick to the surface. Actually, let me just undo that for a second, because I just want to show you an easier way to do this particular type of setup. So if I go into edit mode and I select everything and then I do the move, so it's doing the same thing. It's putting it where I want it. It's just nicely inset kind of thing. But the important part is within edit mode that I do this, my origin point is going to stay dead center. So what I can do is Shift D and kind of crank some of these things out really quickly. Turn my see-through mode off just so I can see it. And let's see, yeah, just do one more. Oop. L. Leave him here. Shift D. Drop another one in. And so the reason that we're doing it in edit mode so that we can crank a bunch of these off. One thing, it's all one object, which is nice, a bit cleaner. But more importantly is our origin point stays dead center. So if I get out of edit mode here and I go in and do a mirror modifier, that means I can just do the one side and then this side kind of populates as well. And also too, I can do not only X but Y. So as long as this thing has to be symmetrical in X and Y, otherwise of course this isn't going to work. But this just makes it a little bit easier to populate all of these things in and to be able to do it quite quickly. Okay, so there's enough detail to kind of show what I'm getting at here. So as the final stage, we're going into the main object itself, and we're just doing our little bevel. It's easier to kind of wait until you've done all of this sort of secondary detail before you do just the mass bevel on everything. And we just go into our selection, select all the sharp edges. It's going to default to 30% depending on how it is you want to look. In this case here, I want to lower it until I get this one as well. And for the most part too, depending on the shape of your object and all that sort of thing, you can just, if you're having problem areas that aren't selecting until you go very, very low, then just go in and manually select them. But this is about quick and dirty and just kind of getting the example laid out. So I got everything selected, Control B, drag this along until it freaks out. There you go. And then back it into where it should be. So we just, and this is a hard edged object, so I'm not going very far. I don't want a blobby smooth. I want just enough to remove that ultra crisp edge. And then you can go in here and you can adjust these if you want to, but for my purposes, I think this is plenty. Before we export, just make sure that this thing is on flat. Otherwise, you may even see the amount of bevels we have. We don't want that. And before I get going, I want to make sure that these are also shade smooth. And then I'm just going to export this, and I'll just show you what this looks like in Substance Painter in the next video.